Welcome to the latest edition of Don't Take This as Gospel. I'm Mike Partika, and I wanted to talk today about the concept of religion and survival, because what it seems to me is a common thread among all religions is the idea that somehow we survive. Somehow there is something of us that lasts beyond death. Now, some religions take it as a given that we reincarnate. This would be Hinduism, this would be Buddhism, this would even be Scientology, as it turns out. These are all religions that subscribe to the idea of reincarnation. Not sure about Wicca, um, but I've already gone over, why I don't think reincarnation has any validity, at least from any kind of moral sense. It's generally because if I can't know who I was and what I did to deserve who and where I am now, then what good is it to reincarnate from any kind of moral sense? I know that whatever I do in this life, it'll pass on to somebody else. It's not going to be me, not in any real sense that of that person knowing that it was me, so that he could look back at me and shake his fist and be like, "Why did you do this to yourself?" That's not going to happen. So there's really not a whole heck of a lot of sense that I see in reincarnation. But it's interesting to me when I was going through the notes on Scientology that survival was a very strong theme in L. Ron Hubbard's Dianetics. Just like survival is kind of a guaranteed thing in Hinduism with the cycle of reincarnation, and then there's Buddhism, which kind of puts a spin on reincarnationism in the sense that in Buddhism there's actually an exit ramp. There's actually this world is looked at as a world of change and suffering, and we suffer because things move on and we have to let go, and it's a constant process of letting go and suffering on that account. And so in Buddhism, you can attain to a state of nirvana, which is a oneness with everything where change is not something that registers with you. You don't have to let go because you are one with everything. So on the Western side, it's different. If you look at the Abrahamic religions, which would be Judaism and Christianity and Islam and any offshoots of those, what is more generally believed is a resurrection, that we die and we don't come back, as somebody else, but rather we remain in a sort of stasis until there is a last judgment, at which point everybody gets resurrected and is then sorted out as to whether they were the good people or the bad people, and the good people go to eternal bliss and the bad people go to eternal torment. That is the Western way of looking at survival. But it's really interesting to see that survival of some sort or another is a key theme of just about every religion. If you look at it, and the thing is it kind of has to be, if you think about it, because what you know from the natural world is that life has evolved, things die, other things live and reproduce, and those things get to pass their genes on to the next generation. The next generation, some of them survive, some of them don't, some of them reproduce, some of them don't. And that goes on to the next generation. So if you were trying to develop a scheme for, what is the primary goal in life, then you would have to come up with, being evolutionarily successful. Whoever wins the evolution game wins life. That's the meaning of life, according to everything that we know about the natural world. It's not necessarily whoever dies with the most toys wins, but whoever gets to pass on their genes to the next generation wins. And The problem comes when you take the long view and you start thinking about, well, what happens to the universe overall? And used to be that was an open-ended question. There were some people who thought that the universe has been here forever and is just going to stay here forever. But according to the standard model of physics, that's not true. We live in a universe that is decaying. We live in a universe with the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics says that all things run toward maximum entropy. And what that means is everything is running toward a state in which nothing can run. The universe is like a giant battery that is overall winding down, running out. And there are people who try and make the argument. It's like, well, if that's true, then how is it that you could just you could get all this complexity out of life? And the answer to that is that complexity takes more energy than simplicity. It takes work to get something like this. All of a sudden, I've turned this into a Tinder profile video. No, it takes work to develop a human being. It takes a lot of energy to power our brains. We are very complex creatures, and we require a lot of calories. And those calories are expended in the form of heat, whether we're thinking or whether we're moving, whatever it is we're doing, we are using energy. And we use it up pretty darn quick compared to a static system. So the reason that complex things can evolve is because you can, as long as the total energy of the system goes down, you can have pockets of energy like us rise up. It's kind of like when people complain, well, if there's global warming, then why did I see snow yesterday? Well, global warming means that average temperatures are going up. It doesn't mean that temperatures will never go down anywhere on Earth ever again. It means that if you take the average temperature all over the planet, you might see some really cold pockets over here that you don't expect to see. But that's going to be balanced out by warmer pockets over here overall. So you can't look at, a frozen Sahara Desert and say, oh, well, look, so much for global warming, if, the Alaskan tundra is boiling. That's, you have to take the average of it all. So the same thing goes for entropy. The total entropy in our universe is increasing. Even if we have pockets of complexity where it looks like order is winning the day. So what does that mean for the end of time? What does that mean for survival? Well, it means that eventually our universe is going to keep degrading and degrading and degrading until all of the usable energy in the universe is used up. It's all heat now. It's all just heat radiating all around in a constant temperature. None of it usable. None of it can be used to do any work. And in the meantime, all the mass in the universe is going to exist only in black holes. The black holes are just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and suck up all of the mass in the galaxy, all of the observable mass. There's still this dark matter thing we haven't figured out. And then, not only that, but, space is getting bigger and bigger and bigger due to dark energy, which we haven't figured out yet. And that means that the universe is constantly flying apart. We'll get to the point where you can't see any stars from our star system because they're too far away for the light to ever make it back to us. So we're looking at a universe that is, just basically flattening and dimming and stretching and decaying in every meaningful way, to the point that someday there's going to be really nothing left. There's only going to be all of the mass in black holes, which, I actually did just read something today where the scientists are now saying that you can actually get information out of a black hole so that you can reconstruct what fell in. But there's not going to be any usable heat in the universe, or usable energy in the universe. It's all going to be heat, so there's nothing that's going to be around to read any information that pops out of a black hole. It's all just going to be a jumbled mess. I mean, jumbled mess that you could probably reassemble into something if there was anybody around to assemble it. But if matter and energy is all there is, and consciousness is only the result of that, and there's no consciousness beyond this universe, then there's just going to be nothing. There's going to be no receivers for any of that information in the black hole. So whether a black hole, just chews everything up and spits out junk, or whether it spits out useful information, there's not going to be anyone to use the information. So what am I getting towards? I'm getting towards the point that nothing in this universe survives. Nothing survives. Nothing can survive indefinitely. There is a point at which everything stops, and it's all scorched earth, wasteland, nothing. So, knowing this, the idea of survival within this universe, let's say on a reincarnation type basis, really doesn't make any sense. Because if you believe that, all of the lives, that the future lives that we could possibly have are going to happen in this universe, there's going to come a point at which life is just totally not sustainable in this universe. There's going to be nothing to fall back on. It's almost going to be, in the sense, the end of history at that point. And if there is some realm beyond this universe, which is where our souls that reincarnate are coming from, they're going to be stuck there. And they're going to be stuck in the shapes that they're at, which means that it all boils down to a sort of last judgment anyway, because once the last life forms in the universe are gone and the universe isn't capable of creating any more life forms, then all of those souls who have been reincarnating are going to be stuck as they are forever. So that's kind of a last judgment scenario in the first place. So it's kind of like, well, given that, why do you bother believing in a religion that has reincarnation as the basis? Because what it all eventually boils down to is, at some point, you're stuck. And it may as well be after this life. One last little thing. It's funny that I asked a physicist about this one time, because when you think about the idea of the universe tending towards this impending heat death, even if it's billions of years off, I mean, our own death is probably decades off, and yet it still we can still look at that and it depresses us, because it means we're not going to see all the things that we would like to see. We're not going to do all of the things that we would likely like to do. And then we know from a more extended viewpoint that the universe isn't going to last, and that nothing we do is going to matter, because there's not going to be any consciousness left in the universe to appreciate it. There's not going to be any mass left in the universe that's not stuck in a black hole where anybody could look around and appreciate what it is we've done. There's not going to be any information in the energy that's all scattered around that's been reduced to useless heat that somebody could then assemble back, even if there was somebody to assemble it back, which there won't be. So when you realize that everything that happens in this universe is futility, how do you deal with that? And I remember asking a physicist who is an atheist, and I just remember his answer. He was like, well, they don't know that that's how it's going to all end up. And I was like, really? This is not something that anybody's shy about on the science platforms about, the heat death of the universe. That's not something that anybody's disputing. It just sounded like this guy was in denial, because he too, in a way, would like to survive. And I think knowing that, and just knowing, we all inevitably face our own personal end, that's what makes religion so attractive, is that it offers survival. The Scientology series I just did, the last thing that I read was part of Dianetics, the original thesis. And L. Ron Hubbard said, the first law is survive. Religion, though, is what happens when you know you won't survive. That's kind of the point. You won't survive. So what's it all for? That's not something you're really going to learn from the world. If there's something to be learned, it's going to have to be something that someone tells you, that someone reveals to you. Hence the notion of revelation. Because if everything in this world is going to die, whatever it is that constitutes life and gives meaning to life has to come from outside and has to break in and tell us what it's all about. So those are some fundamental things to think about. Maybe that sets the stage for where we'll go next. We'll just have to see in the next episode. Please do subscribe so that you know when the next episode comes out. And I will talk to you later.